Okay, before we dive in, I just want to take a brief moment and just let everyone who's listening know how grateful we are here at Beat Your Ism that you tuned in or downloaded or streamed or however you access this podcast. Means everything to us, and we're hoping in order to return the favor that we can offer suggestions or insight that will help you with whatever you are struggling with right now. This is a welcome place. We want everyone to know that you're not alone. There's so many people that have struggles just like you do. And I think it's time that the world started bringing some of these struggles to light and we started talking about them so we can all help each other. Also, between this episode and our next episode, which could be 1 to 2 weeks depending on production time, I'm going to be uploading little like special features like what you would get with the rental of a DVD or something like that. They could be, little tidbits that ended up on the cutting room floor, but still have a lot of good insight. I'm also going to be trying my best to read song lyrics, one song a week, because of the copyright laws. I can't play them during the podcast, but there's so much music out there that really helped me in the pre-stages of my recovery and then now in my recovery that is active. Things that really resonate and related to me. So there will be that available coming soon. And I want to thank you for your patience in advance. We are novice podcasters. This is the first time that we've ever done this. There will be a little learning curve, and we appreciate your patience the whole way. So, without further ado, let's jump right into episode 1 of Beat Your Ism. All right, welcome to the first episode of Beat Your Ism. My name's Matt.
I'm Maggie.
And we are your co-hosts, and we're going to do everything we can do to make you feel warm, safe, comfortable, and glad to be here. We're going to dive in with a little bit about ourselves. But first, before we do that, we would like to try and explain to you the premise of this podcast and why we both decided to devote a good portion of our lives getting this done for you. So that being said, I want everyone out there to know that I am going to do everything that I can do just to shed light on what I've been through, and hopefully some of that resonates with you. And I've also heard a lot of things from other people on their road to recovery, and hoping that I can share some of those insights with you as well. Maybe you can apply them to your own life. But we are here as a team to try to help you. We want to connect with you. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram. You can reach us via Gmail at beatyourism@gmail.com. That's all one word. You can like our page on Facebook, and you can follow us on Instagram. Feedback is welcome. We really want to hear what you guys think, not only about the podcast, but we want to hear about what's going on in your lives too. I mean, that's going to give us motivation and direction as far as the podcast goes. So
I like to think of ourselves as experienced addicts. We're here bringing this podcast sort of as an invitation to explore ourselves, specifically our addiction and our habits, and what it looks like to start living without the ones that aren't serving us anymore. The purpose is to provide another vehicle, essentially, to share insights, exchange perspectives. This is a big room. It holds a lot of people, and we're hoping we can shed light on some viewpoints that can be overlooked in the mainstream, or maybe ask some questions that sometimes don't get asked out loud. This is not meant to be a how-to guide. We're not selling anything or recruiting anyone. And we're definitely not the only podcast out there on recovery. I like to think, though, that we are not always so serious, though, that we have an eclectic background. We don't subscribe to one way or the other. We paint in color, not just in black and white around here. And we're definitely not the one and only venue for recovery discussion. We are, however, fairly eclectic in the modalities and practices we've learned, and quite frankly, we're not always so serious. Yes, we have our share of war stories, but we also have stories of doing good. And I think it's safe to say that recovery has directly provided us the potential to do even more good. So let's talk about it. Let's just take a minute to revel in it. Let's give praise where praise is due.
And I think too it's very important that, I mean, at least in my own recovery, connecting with other people that have gone through the same things or had a lot of the same trials that I've had has been very important for me. And I think it could be important for you as the listener as well, just to connect. And that's what we're here for. We want to provide a venue, just like Maggie said, a venue where you can come and you can connect with people that understand you. And we're not going to judge. Certainly hope that you're not going to be judging us. We've both been through some things that we probably regret, and I think everyone out there probably has a list as well. But yeah, we want to be able to connect with you, and I think that's our goal for this podcast, is just to do something a little different than all the rest of the podcasts out there. We don't want to come across as know-it-alls. We're still going through recovery. We still have a lot to learn, but there's things that we have experienced that hopefully you can apply to your own lives and start getting your life headed in the direction that you want, if it's not there yet. So Maggie, why don't you help us understand what an ism is?
Basically, an ism is any ongoing relationship to something or a behavior, an addiction that tends to be a recurring theme in our life and doesn't do us any good. Right off the bat, I'll name a few: alcoholism, drug addiction, sex addiction, gambling addiction. But in reality, this doesn't have to just mean a tendency towards a substance or a drink. I believe that the elements of an ism are quite simple. There's simply, one, a struggle, and two, it's persistent. This ism causes agitation in your life. It may be personal unrest, tangible consequences, losing family, jobs, freedom, or hurting yourself or others. It's just simply a persistent, chronic, perpetual act in your life. It's a tendency, a circumstance, or a behavior that repeats itself. Now, when I think of ism or hear the word ism, I think of something permanent, like a chronic disease or a disfigurement in your body. And I think a lot of us has learned this too. There's a lot of debate about whether an addiction is genetic, within your control, outside of your control. And I don't want to define an ism in these terms right now, because I don't want to kind of limit the scope of our audience. I do want to point out, though, that regardless, when we're actively in our addiction or repeating these toxic behaviors, we're chronically infected with its effects. It is fixed within us until it's met with any force. So for the sake of this podcast, we're talking about isms as just sort of a go-to automatic behavior, habit, person that is doing us no good.
It's almost like there's many different roads to the same place, right? And the ism is the place. It's like you could struggle, like you said, with booze. You could struggle with drugs. You could struggle with money, relationships. You could be falling in love more than you should, and all the pain and all the hurt that comes with that. I mean, everyone who struggles with an ism gets to the same place. It's a place where they need help, and it's a place where they need to make change. And That is what we're trying to point out, and then we're trying to provide a road out of that place because no one wants to hang there, right?
Right.
You want out. Once you get there, it's not a fun place. With that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about ourselves, not too much because we don't want to bore you. So, Maggie, why don't you tell us what your life was like before you started your addictive behavior?
Just to lay it out there, the addictive behavior, Matt, was mainly drinking alcohol, which I started when I was a teenager. So, what was I like before I used alcohol? I was a kid, basically.
Right. You don't really know because you were young and you didn't really have things figured out yet.
Sure, totally not conscious, not self-aware, which is typical, I think, for people that age. So no shame there. But nonetheless, I did get started at an early age, mainly socially, just doing what teenagers do, or what I thought teenagers did, which was go out, try and find the party that had booze in it.
Was there any other reasons besides just being a kid and wanting to be with your friends? What did alcohol do for you? Did it change the way you feel?
I think that was the surface motivation. I do think that I loved it immediately. I really did. Sort of like when you give a little kid their first ice cream cone and they're just consumed with joy immediately, followed by this quick look of, you mean you've been holding out on this the whole time?
How dare you?
Yeah, like what is this magical elixir that's been hiding in the cabinet?
What did it do for you? Did it like make you feel good? Did it take away some of the social anxieties that you might have had at the time?
Yeah, I think I felt immediately like I fit in, which is something I had never felt before. I always felt different. I lived on the different side of town. I had to play piano every night, whereas other kids were just like out playing, having
Being
fun.
kids.
Now that I'm an adult, I realize, of course you were different. We're all different. So get over it. No big deal. But nonetheless, all I wanted to be was normal as a kid. I didn't want to be the person that got good grades. I didn't want to be the super popular person. I didn't want any sort of spotlight. I just wanted to blend in. And when it came to parties or social situations where there's alcohol, well, guess what? Everybody's drinking alcohol and so am I. So I'm fitting in. Like I'm blending in. I'm not the one that's like the designated driver. I'm not the one that's trying their first drink. I'm not the older person that's buying the booze. Like there's nothing unique about me. I'm just the person in the middle of other people with a cup in my hand.
So when do you think that you started to use it more than just for a social situation, or use it more than just using it because everybody else was?
Well, when I went to college, I sort of followed suit in joining a sorority and partying as well. I realized, though, in college that a lot of the people I started going to parties with, drinking was still fairly new to them. So finding the place that had the most booze, the most people that were drinking was still really exciting. And to me, it was old news. And I had a fake ID. And to me, I was an old hat in partying and drinking at that time. So even though I did have this social group in college, I quickly found another group of people that I lived with that wanted to drink all the time, just like I did. And so I easily fell back on meeting with these people almost on a daily basis.
Were you drinking outside of the times that you were with them?
I was drinking quite a lot.
Were you hiding it?
No, I wasn't, because I had found this group of similar people.
Where they totally accepted just drinking constantly.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big
No,
deal.
not at all.
Okay.
So there was no hiding it. It was just sort of the norm. So that worked well, because on the surface I had, these college do-gooders that, dabbled in sorority life. And so I could get away with drinking with them and at the same time, like, fall back on drinking with this other group of people and all those in between moments.
Well, it sounds like you had most of your time covered then. You could
Right.
drink and it wasn't a big deal because you were always with people that did.
Right. And so it wasn't until I moved away from that group of people and we all kind of went our separate ways, and I moved in with a boyfriend at the time that I hadn't been dated for very long at all. That's when I started just drinking on my own because I wasn't really hanging out with friends. He might work at this time, I worked at another time. And so I ended up just drinking by myself, and I guess just never stopped at that point. It caused problems in our relationship. We eventually broke up and I moved out, and just continued to drink on my own. And as I got older, I finished college and I started a job and I, was of legal age. I justified it to myself that this is a sophisticated thing to do. Here you are, a single, self-sufficient woman. Isn't that what you see on TV? And now you come home and you have a glass of wine. How cool are you, Maggie? The reality is, though, I was drinking quite a bit, and it was something I looked forward to doing. Pretty safe to say it was my one and only hobby at the time, my one and only friend too. So that was just my lifestyle. And the longer I did that, years passed and I became physically addicted to it. I no longer cared about much else. Started getting DUIs. Those DUIs, I then lost jobs because I had to go serve jail time.
While all this is happening, getting DUIs, serving jail time, losing jobs, did it ever come across your mind that maybe I have a problem? Or were you just like, this is just the way it is and I have to deal with it because I'm not going to give it up?
I knew I had a problem. I just didn't care. I didn't care about myself at the time. I had sort of given up on myself, just accepted that I was a failure. And so I really had no desire to, quote, solve this problem. It was just a part of who I was at that point, and I was okay with it. I was with my now husband for a few years. He was with me through the midst of all this. We were in each other's lives, I guess, in various ways through the midst of all this. So it was out on the table for him, not anybody else in my life, not any family or friends, but with him, at least it was. So for me, it was sort of another way to rationalize that, like, it's okay to just leave this problem in my life the way it is, because I am in a relationship with somebody that's aware of it. I am getting in all this trouble, going from home to home, spending money on so many bills and rehabs and attorney fees and booze, of course.
Well, and I mean, it sounds like you had reached the point at that time in your life when you lost control of the alcohol and the alcohol started to control you. Do you remember, or is that kind of blurry, like when you think you crossed that line?
You mean physically lost control?
Well,
or?
just lost control in the sense of, you had to drink, but before you were choosing, right? Did you ever get to the point where you felt like you just had to drink and you wouldn't be able to function without it?
Yeah, I did, because I physically was addicted to it. Like, I really did need it to function in that respect. Looking back at it now and what I believe now about myself, it's not necessarily that I lost control to alcohol. It's that I lost control to my thoughts. I lost control to the lies I had, or the stories I had created about myself. The story of, I'm a failure. I'm destined to do nothing special. I can't take care of myself. I need somebody else to take care of me. Nobody likes me. I'm just like a miserable human being. So me subscribing to those thoughts, I think is where I lost control, because I lost control of really knowing and understanding and being okay with who I am, and knowing that I'm the only one that controls who I am. So that is what I lost. And like I said, that's why even when I had a problem and knew I had a problem, because I had all this evidence of the consequences it was causing in my life, I didn't care. Like, I was okay with just accepting that this is a part of my life, and there's going to be harder struggles because of it. And most people would look at my life and be like, well, why would you want to live like that? Like, why would you want to go to jail? Why would you want to lose your job and like be unstable? Why would you just why? That seems so difficult and miserable, which it was. But I was okay because I felt that I deserved this difficult and miserable life. That there,
Like you weren't worthy to have
yeah,
anything better
yeah,
than
and
that.
this
Yeah.
is just my cross to bear. Anybody else that doesn't like it, that's their problem.
So since you've gotten sober, if you look back on what you just said and what your perception of yourself was, how has your perception of yourself changed since you've been sober?
I don't want to come across like I'm this superhero or just living in this pink cloud, but I really realize that I'm just like everyone else, in the sense that I have just as much control about how I feel about myself, what I do with myself, and how I live my life. There's, even with that I don't look very good on paper to an employer, even though I've had, failures in relationships or a checkered past, it doesn't matter. Like, I still, the control I have over myself is still just as much as it was when before all that stuff happened. I wasn't put on this earth. I'm not living on this earth with all these things out to get me, without all these obstacles. There's nothing in the world that is sitting here on earth for the purpose of being out to get Maggie or being out there to block Maggie from doing something. That guy over there that is, successful in whatever measure it may be, there's no reason I can't be that too if I so choose. Like, even at this age, even with my history, there's nothing specifically on this earth that is here to block me.
Do you think that you could have had that perspective, or could you have that perspective if you were still drinking and be able to put it into practice?
I don't think so, because even though I had accepted drinking as a part of who I was, or just a part of my life, and was always going to be like that, I still was ashamed by it. I still felt, out of all the struggles I have to have in my life, everybody might go through hard times, but out of all the things that was put in my life, if you will, that's how I thought at the time, this is the one, really. So I did. I still felt a lot of shame about it, and I don't know that I would be able to break free from all these negative thoughts I had about myself, or even steer a little bit more in a positive direction, still holding on to that shame, because it was so heavy. So no, I don't think I could have got there while drinking, because it's hard enough to do it even if I wasn't coping using alcohol. As somebody that had to live their life for so long, with low self-esteem, thinking poorly of myself, thinking negatively, I'm not capable, that's hard enough to really look at objectively and realize that's not true, and be willing to change your
Very
life and
hard.
live accordingly.
I think that's one of the commonalities that everyone listening has probably had moments in their life like that. I don't think you can really avoid that. And if you're under the influence of any kind of substance, if it's going through your veins, it gets up into your brain, it starts to affect the way that you think, and it starts to affect the way that you feel. And if you're not feeling positive about yourself, it's only going to make it worse.
Yeah. And to be quite frankly, I wasn't exactly all spick and span when I was drinking too. Yeah, showers aren't a consistent part of my story.
Well, we'll get, we'll maybe we'll dive into that in another episode.
I just mean there were times where I tried to detox at home, or I would, who knows, I was just physically just in bad shape.
How long?
It's poison for your body.
Oh yeah, it is. How long were you in an attempt at recovery before you finally entered what you feel is recovery? Were you trying for a long time? Or did you know that you had to quit before you actually did?
I don't think I sincerely ever attempted it. I had a little bit of sobriety about a year and a half, but it's started because I went to jail, and then fortunately when I got out, I just didn't go back to drinking right away. But I wouldn't necessarily call that recovery. That was just me doing like an extended stay of abstinence. I don't think I ever really put any earnest effort into recovery, because for the longest time, and even when I did stop drinking for a little bit, again, like I had that negative image of myself, and so I didn't really think I was deserving of doing anything different. Why try? I don't really want to. I'm cool just having this problem with my life if it means I just get to sort of close my eyes and live blindly and never have to really take a look at myself, because I didn't like myself. It's bad enough I have to live with me. Yeah. Why do I want to stare at me in the mirror too?
I definitely feel a lot of the same things that you felt and are feeling now, and I think a lot of listeners probably can relate to that also. I mean, for me, a lot of the reasons why I was drinking is I didn't like myself. I didn't like the way I felt. I didn't like the fact that I had a lot of fear. I didn't have a lot of pride. You know, things like that. Those are powerful emotions that really push people to do things that they wouldn't normally do. So here's the big question, and we're gonna wrap up your portion on this. Would you ever go back?
No.
Why?
Because I like myself for who I am. I really do.
Is this the first time in your life that you felt like that?
Yeah, and not just saying it because it sounds good, which it does, but it feels good. It's just the truth. Like, why would I want to? I'm Maggie. I'm who I am. I'm amazing, just like everybody else walking on this earth. Like, I'm living just the way I'm supposed to live by just being me. So why would I want to live my life revolving around an untruth, which is, Maggie, like, you're not right. You're a bad person. Like, that's just not true. It's just not logical to follow suit to a premise that's not true.
And it feels pretty good to be honest. I mean, I know for me, when I was drinking, I was very dishonest and lied and deceived people, and the biggest person I was lying to was myself. I mean, it was all lies. And I think just feeling good about yourself and holding yourself in the truth, that is an incredibly liberating feeling, to just be honest with yourself, be honest with others. And now that I've gotten a taste of it, just like you just said, there's no way I want to go back to any other way of thinking, feeling, practicing life. I just want to live in the truth.
Right. And one of the things too I learned in recovery is just that an apology or making amends is more than just saying the words. It's doing different. You apologize when you're ready to not repeat that same action. And a lot of times when we've done a lot of bad things to other people. So a lot of us choose to apologize to them. Your actions through sobriety will help ease that relationship, but maybe there is something you could do. Like, maybe you stole from them. Can I pay you back? And I had to apply that to myself, not just, oh, Maggie, I'm sorry. I forgive you for all the things you've done, for all the harm you've done to myself, but what can I do to make it up to you? And so I live through my forgiveness, through my amends, through my apology by doing different. Not just, I didn't just say the words to myself. I get up and I do things that I don't necessarily like to do because it's the right choice to make for myself, because it's kind to myself.
It's like purging guilt, right? I mean, for me, it's like when I try to make amends, whether it be with myself or people that I may have hurt, it's a purge of guilt, and we can't function normally, and we can't function at our best if we're carrying around baggage of guilt. That is the worst, right? So I think that's also critical in anybody's recovery, is just to start to forgive and start letting some of the guilt go.
Right.
And then you can start to really live.
Right.
I'm going to take you off the hot seat. I'm going to put myself on it.
All right.
So ask me anything you want. I'll tell you.
Okay. Well, let's start from your beginning too, Matt. What were you like before you started using?
Well, I started using meth when I was in my early 20s. That lasted for about 2 years, and I think that was just basically because I was wrapped up with some people that were in it, and I just kind of joined. But that screwed things up too. But before that, I was a kid who was just like any other kid, but I had a really bad speech problem, so that kind of turned me into an introvert. And, when I first started drinking, that was the thing that really kind of washed all that away, because I got courage from it, right? Liquid courage, right? And as soon as I got a taste of that, I was like, oh, I can be confident, and my speech isn't as bad when I drink because I'm not nervous, right? So there was definitely a deep need for something inside of me to just chill the F out. And alcohol did that. So I started drinking pretty much every day when I was in my early 20s. After I quit doing the meth, I kind of replaced alcohol, or replaced meth, with booze.
Okay. So was it pretty habitual right away, or was there any significant event that kind of led to or changed it to becoming a regular strategy in your life?
Well, I mean, every event just kind of compounded it. It got to the point where it was like there was a reason for me to drink if I woke up, if I, did something wrong, if somebody told me something good and made me happy. It's like, oh, drink, sweet. I can have a drink now. I can have a drink now. I don't think I really ever had it under control because I was constantly fighting it. Constantly. It was a constant fight. And I knew that I was doing wrong. At the beginning, it was more just like, hey, all my friends drink. I'm going to drink too. We're going to go wine tasting. We're going to go over to someone's house on like a Friday night. We're just going to hang out and drink and watch TV. And my social life revolved around it. There's no doubt that, and that started in my early 20s too. So, that is where I kind of developed some of the habits.
It's gradual.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was pretty much gradual. There was no event that did it, but there were times over the last, I don't know, 25 years. There were times that I thought I had it under control, and I would have like a glass of wine. There was like a year and a half run there where I was like, okay, gonna have one glass of wine every night during the week, and that's it. And then weekends I would just like, whatever, right? But so I for about a year and a half I was like, okay, I'm gonna wait till 9 p.m. after the kids go to bed, and I'm gonna have a glass of wine. And if you ever watched the show Cougar Town, they had a wine glass, and I think his name was Carl. I think the wine glass's name was Carl, and it was a full bottle. It was as big, you could dump a whole thing into it. So my glasses started getting bigger. And then, it was at that point that I just kind of gave up. I was like, I'm going to drink whenever I need to.
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So clearly you were managing it, or it was on the forefront of your mind, which I think is a big indicator to a lot of people when they realize, man, this is just in my thoughts, even if I'm not drinking right now or using. So what kind of problems did it cause in your life?
Man, it affected every aspect. I think the biggest, I mean, it affected my relationships. It affected my job in the sense that I wasn't performing at the level that I could. So, I have a lot of guilt from that. Just like, okay, well, my boss is paying me a lot of money to do a service for him, but I'm not able to give him 100%. I knew leading up to quitting drinking, I knew for probably 2 years leading up to that I had to do something. It had affected my marriage, my relationships with my friends, my relationships with my coworkers, my health. I was on like three different anxiety meds, and I tried like we went through like 10 different kinds over a long period of time trying to find something that fit because the doctors, they didn't think that I was drinking as much as I was because I wasn't being totally honest with them, and I didn't know that alcohol creates a lot of anxiety, nervousness, insecurity, stuff like that. Kind of goes hand in hand when you're withdrawing, which with booze it happens about 3 hours after your last drink. Your body starts to go, what the, So I tried a bunch of, we tried a bunch of different meds and da da da. So it was affecting my health. My blood pressure was high. I was taking medication for that. So the side effects from all the meds that I was on was having a compounded negative effect on my marriage, on my relationship with my kids. It was all bad.
Yeah,
It was all bad.
I can relate, especially with the fear. There was a time where I did not feel comfortable leaving the house because I thought something catastrophic would happen.
Yeah.
So, but man, you were living a couple years knowing that you needed to change something, but still you weren't making any moves to do it. Like, why? What led you to, I guess, convert those thoughts of knowing you have to change to actually putting change into action?
Well, that's a loaded question. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it, but number one, I mean, I was the king of justification, right? I could justify anything, and I was the king of lying to myself. Like, I've got this. I've got it under control. I can stop whenever I need to. Right now, I don't need to. Right now, I have a lot of stress, reasons why. I have a lot of reasons why I don't want to quit. And I didn't really want to put it into play because it had gotten to the point too where I was so physically addicted that I would wake up every morning with like shakes and feel like I was going to puke or pass out or something like that. So I started learning how to hair of the dog like no one else I've ever known. It was like first thing in the morning. That's the only way I'm going to be able to put one foot in front of the other. Only way I'm going to be able to make it through the day. And then once I got to that point, I was like, oh shit, like I'm in trouble. I knew I was in trouble. And I didn't know. It probably got really intense for like the last 6 months leading up to when I finally quit. Got really intense. A lot of stuff was going bad. I was screwing every aspect of my life up and I was losing control and I was just lying to everyone that I cared about and everyone that cared about me, which is actually worse because then now I feel guilty that I was putting them through all that, right? But I think the catalyst to that really took effect as far as me making a move was probably my wife. And things had gotten to the point where she was just done and she was trying very hard to be patient with me, but like she was at her wits and we got in a big fight she ended up leaving the house and staying with a friend. And then 3 days later, we agreed to go to a counseling appointment, at which time the counselor and my wife intervened on me kind of indirectly. And because they weren't like, you're here for an intervention and you're going to stop drinking, like you see on TV, it doesn't really happen like that. They were more just like, look, this is creating a problem. This problem is not going to go away until you do something. And it was just, it was when something just clicked. And I was like, okay, well, now the cat's out of the bag, right? Like, my wife doesn't know how much I've been drinking, and my counselor doesn't know how much I've been drinking, but they know that I'm drinking and they know that it's a problem. So it's time, right? So that was the day. And I remember making the conscious decision and going, this is it. Today's the day. You have to do this. And the good thing is that even though at the time, everyone says if you're going to do it, you have to do it for you, right? Everyone says that. Well, some of us need a little push. Something to push you in the right direction, whether it be a loved one telling you that you're hurting them by what you're doing, or whether you get a DUI and you go to jail, or there's things that can nudge us in the direction that we need to be. Maybe listening to a podcast could be that thing, right? So initially, I quit because everyone was like, you've got to do it. Because I didn't have the mental capacity to realize, number one, how bad things were. I didn't know what the reality was because I wasn't in reality. I hadn't been in reality for years. As much as I was drinking, for as much time as I was drinking, my reality was so distorted, yet I still believed it was real. Right. So I needed someone to show things to me because I couldn't even see them, right? So, I thank my wife and my counselor for giving me the nudge that I needed, but as soon as that happened and as soon as I quit drinking and I started to detox and I started to like have panic attacks that were awful and all this stuff, I was like, okay, now you're left with nothing. It's just you. So either you start being honest with yourself and do this for yourself, or you're going to go right back to the way things were, which obviously didn't work because I wouldn't have been in the position that I was in had I listened to myself sooner.
Right. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, myself included, of, initially trying to make change to sort of appease somebody else or because somebody else is requiring them to or encouraging them to. And so maybe they do. They sober up, they detox. And then all of a sudden they are in reality and they're like, holy moly, this is what my reality looks like.
And it's jacked up.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
And no wonder I was trying to bury my head in the sand this whole time. This is ugly to look at. But you finally do. And I can relate to realizing that, man, if I want something to be different, I have to do it myself because I've exhausted all my other resources. I've gotten 10 billion chances from everybody under the sun, and this truly is the time where I don't have any options to go back. Right. And so it is going to be me and only me to make my life look different. And I know I can't do that sober.
Right.
Or not sober.
And so. It's, going back to what you were saying when you said that, you for the first time liked you. You liked yourself. It took me so long to get there. And there's no way I could have ever gotten there while using. I just couldn't do it because there's too much guilt. When you know you're doing wrong and you continue to do it, you beat yourself up. You don't give yourself accolades ever, Right. So it probably took me like 2 or 3 months to really go, you know what? You're not a bad dude. You're actually a pretty good dude, and people can get a lot out of their interactions with you. So stop holding it in, stop hiding it, just be you. And that took a long time to be able to think like that to myself, accept me for who I am, and then start to fall in love with myself too. I mean, that's something that I've never had. Something rang really true with me last week. I put a Facebook post up or something like that, and somebody commented on it, and it was really simple. It just said, without darkness, you can't see light. And it was so simple, but it rang so true, and it totally relates to this in the sense that I went through probably 25 years of dark. There was a lot of light while going through that. It wasn't just dark the whole time, but when it came to my addiction, it was dark, and I was unable to see myself until I stopped drinking, and then I started to see the light. But I wouldn't have been able to fall in love with myself had I not seen how bad things can be, and what a mess that my life was. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for going through what I've been through. It's obviously given me a platform to hopefully help a lot of people, and even if I help one person, I'm cool, because then my karma's good, right? If you believe in that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, I think it is important that people find whatever motivation that they need to make the initial move, right? It's so important that it's coming from a place that is important to the person and that matters to them. Because if you make attempts and fail, you weren't at that point yet, right?
Yeah.
Because when you make an attempt and it actually sticks, it's like, oh, I really did need this. And sometimes people need help getting to that point.
Right. Yeah, our capacity to change is always still there. We may think as we get older, we get more stubborn, which may be true, but nonetheless, we're still just as able to change if we want to. Always. That doesn't ever leave you. And so even if you don't really know what the end point looks like, or for me, I had stopped even trying to think of a future of anything good. It doesn't matter. Just knowing that you have the capacity to change, you're able to do it, and being open to that can really go a long way. Because there's so many people that have gone through this situation 100 times. They've gone to 50 different rehab programs. They've gone to this and that meeting, therapy, boot camp, who knows. At some point though, you never know when that point is going to be, that something might stick, something might click, like you said.
Yeah, whatever works for you.
Where you take that one step forward and you continue to just keep stepping forward.
Absolutely.
So you never know when that is. So don't hold back your steps, even if you're somebody like me that has many times made attempts and just fallen right back into giving up.
It's almost like you have to embrace it. Be ready to embrace it, because when it does hit and you do go, oh my gosh, I need to stop whatever behavior is causing me turmoil. When it hits, you're going to resist it, because you don't want to, number one, stop your addictive behavior, but number two, you probably are going to doubt, like, there's no way that I can do this. There's no way that it's going to stick. But if you're not ready to embrace it and go, boom, this is it, I'm going to get going on the right foot, right? You have to have an open mind for that. So now that the listeners know about us and what our podcast is, I would like to say that I'm very grateful that each and every one of you tuned in or downloaded this or did whatever you had to do to hear us. Maggie and I are by no means fixed either. We are a work in progress. We both every day try to learn new things about ourselves, and we try to learn new tricks and just anything that we can do to keep us on the path that we're on. So with that being said, we want you to take part. We want you to be a part of this. We're going to make it as interactive of a podcast as we possibly can. We want you guys to reach out via email, Facebook, Instagram. I might do Twitter, so we can, cross that bridge when we get to it. But we want to invite each and every one of you just to reach out to us, share whatever you've got going on. If we can give you insight that would help, great. Sometimes it just gives us topics that we can talk about. And we're also going to try to not talk about ourselves as much as we did today, but we did feel that it was important that each and every one of you got to know us, and maybe with the experiences that we have, they might stick a little bit more with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining in. Nice to meet you all too. Just to give you a little heads up on what's coming up in the future of the podcast, we're going to kick it off starting next week with a series of episodes dedicated to that classic love story of star-crossed lovers in Love Lost, talking about our addiction and our relationships to our ism and what it kind of looks like to end that relationship. Next week, episode 2, we're starting with the breakup, followed by the makeup, the rebound. So these are all terms that we're probably all too familiar with, and we're just going to take a good hard look and have a nice open discussion about our experiences, our tips, how to brace ourselves for ending that relationship, and looking your addiction in the eye and finally saying, I'm just not that into you.
Yeah, we've all had to go through that in the past with other relationships other than our addictions, and it's never easy. So we don't want to sugarcoat this. It's not going to be an easy thing if you decide this is, your time. And if it's your time to just continue on the road that you're on, we want to try to help support you in that journey also. So have a great week, and thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, you can find us on Facebook under Beat Your Ism. You can find us on Instagram, same thing, Beat Your Ism, and our email account is beatyourism, all one word, and ism is spelled ISM. So beatyourism@gmail.com. Have a great week.